welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Directors of Vallecitos Water District on Wednesday, February 17th, 2021 at 5 p.m. Okay, we had a little bit of an echo, but it went away. I'm going to read a quick notice to the public, as we've been doing since the early months of the COVID pandemic. Due to the evolving situation with the COVID-19 novel coronavirus, so long as state or local public health officials have imposed or recommended social distancing measures, Vallecitos Water District will hold future meetings via teleconferencing and allow members of the public to observe and address the meeting telephonically or otherwise electronically. During this period of time, Vallecitos Water District will not be making any physical location available for members of the public to observe the meeting and offer public comment. The public is encouraged to watch and participate in the meeting from the safety of their homes. The meeting can be viewed on the agenda page located on the main page of the district's website. Public comments or questions can be submitted to the following email address: publiccomment@vwd.org. All written comments that are received at least 90 minutes before the meeting will be provided to the board, and a record of the receipt of comment will be noted during the meeting. Members of the public viewing the meeting via Zoom video conferencing platform can express their desire to provide input at the appropriate time by utilizing the raise hand function. Additional instructions for online participation will be posted on the district's website at www.vwd.org/meetings. And as we've been doing all along, we encourage the public to engage with the board. Please raise your hand at any time that you'd like to speak, and we'll try to recognize you in a timely manner. With that, I'll go ahead and do a roll call. Director Hernandez.
Here.
Director Boyd Hodgson. Director Boyd Hodgson, are you on mute?
Yeah, sorry, yes, I was on mute.
Yep, no worries. Director Elitharp.
Here.
Director Pennick.
Here.
And I'm here as well, so we got the whole team. Okay, moving right along. I'll go ahead and entertain a motion to adopt tonight's agenda.
Approved, Hernandez.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second, Pennick.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the agenda by Director Hernandez, a second by Director Pennick. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to a roll call vote. Director Pennick?
Yes.
Director Elitharp?
Yes.
Director Boyd Hodgson?
Yes.
Director Hernandez?
Aye.
And I vote yes as well, so the motion passes unanimously. Okay, this is the time that we'll go ahead and open up our public comment. I know we have one speaker who submitted an email to Glenn who he's going to read, but if there's any other persons wishing to address the matter not on the agenda, you may be heard at this time. No action can be taken until the matter is placed on a future agenda in accordance to board policy. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes. Normally a request to speak form is required. However, in this electronic format, just simply raise your hand and we'll recognize you. Persons wishing to address the board at this time may utilize the raise hand feature. I got ahead of myself. Of the Zoom video conferencing platform. Public comment should start by stating your name, address, and topic. The board is not permitted during this time to enter into dialogue with the speaker. Do you want to read the email that you received, Glenn?
Sure, but first I'll say that there's no other members of the public that have indicated a desire to speak. So the email I'm about to read was received from Gail Martin Monday at 4:20. And I'll read it verbatim here. Dear Vallecitos Water District Board members, 71% of the San Marcos Interceptor project is identified as expansion and is therefore supposed to be paid by developers. 71% of the construction costs are not a cost to provide service to existing customers. The developer fund, the developer fund deficit is 15.1 million and the ratepayer reserve surplus is 102.2 million. The VWD continues to subsidize the funding of development with ratepayer cash. The Vallecitos Water District needs to issue debt to curtail the projected increase in the developer fund deficit, to raise developer fees, and to stop using ratepayer money to subsidize development now, and now is capitalized. Thank you for your consideration. Best regards, Gail Martin, and that's the end of the email.
Okay, great. I see a hand up by Director Hernandez.
Yes, General Manager, we've gone through this time and time again. And I think the same person, we explained to them in our last meeting or so that we are not using ratepayers' funds for improvements. I don't know how many times we need to say that before that message gets clearly sent out. But I hope you respond to that email again. I want to use the right term and be polite at the same time, and I'm having a time figuring it out. So I'll leave that up to you.
Yeah, message received. Yeah, I've had numerous conversations with Ms. Martin. We've shared our perspective, and clearly her perspective is different than ours. I'll continue to engage her in whatever discussion she wants to, but I don't know what else we can do. As we've discussed before, I believe the board's taken the appropriate steps to identify the shortfall, to raise the developer fees. And it will take time. It's nothing that's going to happen overnight, but it will take time. Ms. Martin does mention issuance of debt. We do have debt issuance planned in our 5-year forecast, so that will be happening at the appropriate time. So, but we'll continue to keep the board and the finance committee updated on the developer fee shortfall.
As a new board member, that was a lot of information that came through in that email. In going forward, is it possible if we get a long email like that to show it on screen so I can see it as you're reading it also? Just because that was a lot of numbers. And I don't know. I mean, I guess, it would help me to see it as opposed to just hear it.
Yeah, sure, I can do that. I apologize for not doing it tonight. When the meeting's done, I'll forward you all of you the email so that you have it. We're not allowed to act on the email or on the comment today anyway, but I'll make sure you have a copy of it. And in the future, I'll share it I'll share my screen so you can see it as well.
So when someone has, and just as kind of a point of order for my benefit, if, when someone makes a comment, sometimes we respond to it. And sometimes there's a discussion and sometimes there's not. So what is the protocol? Is it, do we have a discussion about this afterwards, or how does it typically work?
President Sinella, would you like me to address that? Either you or Jim Gilpin. I know, yeah, it might be better if it comes from Mr. Gilpin, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the public is allowed to comment and the board is not allowed to take action on that comment. They can request that staff provide information in response to the question, or they can request that the general manager agendize it for a future meeting for an action item if necessary. But we can't take action. It's just purely public comment.
So taking action, but a response can be said by a board member.
You can respond, but it's generally not advisable to be engaging in debate with them over the information. They're simply putting their statement on the record, for public comment.
Okay, thank you.
Usually when I have a question that comes up from a public comment, I'll usually ask staff to clarify it for me. And I'll do that with this one, because in the comment, it mentioned that the interceptor project was slated at 70%, basically for new capacity. Is that accurate? And if that's the case, are we making, I just want to make sure that then if that is the case, are we taking 70% of the cost of that project and funding it through our capacity fees?
Yeah, so that's and I'm going to look to Mr. Gilpin. If he starts waving the red flag, I'm going to stop talking. But in general, that's true. So I don't remember. I think it's 71%. It's in that range. So when we did the master plan, we determined what would be capacity and what would be for replacement, and that number was applied towards capacity, and that's how much that project, that fund will pick up of these costs. So as the invoices roll in for the project, we will be charging to that fund to fund that share of the project. So you will see an increase in the shortfall, but all of those costs were calculated in the when we calculated the new fees. We knew that that project was on the horizon. We knew what share it would be picking, what share the capacity fund would be picking up of that project. So it was all factored into the plan moving forward.
So the cost of the project, and maybe this is a naive question, but if we have no money in the bucket that's supposed to pay for it, where does the money, how do we take out a loan? How do we pay for it? Because we have a negative balance, right? I mean, that's what was shown in our board packet, right? I mean, how does that work?
Mr. Gilpin, or can I address that?
Yeah, I think what you should do is request that you put a future agenda item on this for board information, Glenn, and provide detail on it, because we're starting to drift into the weeds here on this, and it's not on the agenda.
Okay, be happy to do that if that's the board's desire. We could put it on a future agenda.
Yes.
Okay.
I'd like that. Yes, thank you.
Okay,
Great. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Ms. Martin, for your question. Are you watching for any more hands there, Glenn? Because I don't have that screen open.
yeah, I am, and there's no hands raised.
Thank you. Hey, I'll entertain a motion at this time to approve the consent calendar, please.
Motion to approve, Pinnick?
Thank you. There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion to approve the consent calendar by Director Pinnick and a second by Director Boyd Hodgson. Any discussion or items that want to be pulled for further discussion?
I do have a quick question, and I just thought of it a couple of minutes ago, and I apologize. I could have just asked this before, and I just thought of it. For the newsletter, do we ever advertise if we have job openings in the newsletter? And if not, I'm wondering why not? It seems like that might be a good opportunity to get that out into the community.
I think Chris Robbins is with us tonight. He puts the between the pipes together for us. I'll let Chris address that.
Yes, certainly, General Manager. That's a very good question, and we have not done that. It doesn't mean we couldn't do that, but the timing of the newsletter I don't think works out particularly well. Rondi is my manager over my section, and usually they want to get the turnaround for the job applications a lot quicker than kind of the lead time that we have for the newsletter itself.
Okay, thank you.
Good question. Any other items or discussion before we vote? Okay, we'll go ahead and take a vote on this. Director Boyd Hodgson,
Yes.
Director Elithart,
Yes.
Director Pinnick,
Yes.
Director Hernandez,
Aye.
and I vote yes as well. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, moving to action items tonight. We'll go ahead and start with item 2.1, award of construction contract for the Meadowlark facility. And I'll turn it over to Glenn. Are you gonna do this one?
Yeah, I'll kick it off and then I'll hand it over to Ed. So I think we mentioned before, there's gonna be a lot of work being done down at Meadowlark, and this is just one of those projects that's being done to increase efficiency, replace aging infrastructure, that type of work. So your O&M manager, Ed Pedrazzi, is gonna walk you through it, and I'll try to share a screen so you can, Ed can kind of direct you as to where we're working. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ed.
Thank you, General Manager Brum, President Snell, and members of the board. You can find this project beginning on page 47 of your board packet. It's an approved budget item in our capital budget for this year. Essentially, the actuators on the tertiary valves, they maintain the level of water above each tertiary filter media. And all of that is controlled through our computer system. For the new board members, I won't start talking about SCADA yet until you've had a chance to get through all of that. But we have computers that monitor and control these actuators. They open and close the valves 24/7 to maintain the water level above the filters appropriately. And these actuators are a little over 10 years old, so they're due to be replaced. We are going to replace them with a much more industrial type actuator. And that actuator is essentially just an electric motor that either opens or closes the valve to different positions. The company that we're using, R&B Automation, is a sole source provider for this actuator. They're the only ones that are allowed to sell it in Southern California. They're also the only installer, so that's why you don't see multiple bids on this project. The project is a little bit over budget, mostly because when we got the estimate over a year ago, things have gone up in price. COVID has caused some of that. Some of our projects, we under budgeted a little bit because we're not expecting COVID to have an impact on us. We weren't aware of it yet at the time. Staff needs to request an increase, therefore, for the project budget shortfall of a little over $2,000. We recommend increasing the project budget by $2,002.58, and then authorize the general manager to execute a construction contract with R&B Automation in the amount of $65,691.18, subject to provisions of the contract. And I just would like to add too, that this is a tertiary water project. So the total cost of this project is picked up through our rates to our two wholesaler customers, City of Carlsbad and Leavine Municipal Water District. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board member? I see a hand from Director Pennick.
Yeah, just a question on the sole source provider. You mentioned they're the only ones authorized or licensed. Is that normal? I mean, is there a certain licensing or something that you need to have in Southern California to do this?
For certain manufacturers, they will only certify certain vendors to sell their product and install it, and that's pretty common in the industry. And R&B Automation is the only one in Southern California that is authorized to sell and install these actuators.
Man, I'd love to be R&B Automation. I mean, there's no other competition out there for them?
No, not unless we want to go outside of Southern California, and then we're paying for travel costs, and it'd be cost prohibitive.
Oh, but yeah, exactly. But they're, wow. Okay, no, just that's enlightening.
Interesting. Any other questions for staff? Okay, I don't see any. I'll go ahead and entertain a motion on item 2.1.
I'll move staff's recommendation.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second, Hernandez.
Okay, I think I heard Hernandez. So we have a motion to approve item 2.1 by Director Elitharp, a second by Director Hernandez. I'll go ahead and conduct a roll call vote. Director Pennick.
Yes.
Director Boyd Hodgson.
Yes.
Director Elitharp.
Yes.
Director Hernandez.
Aye.
And I'll vote yes as well. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Good seeing you. Are you going to come back for item 2.2?
I think that's James.
Okay. So we got the construction management and inspection amendment for the San Marcos Interceptor project phase 2. You want to start us off, Glenn, or do you want to just turn it over to James?
It's actually going to be Ryan Morgan that's going to be taking this, and I'll just turn it over to Ryan.
Okay.
Thank you, General Manager Pruitt. Good evening, directors of the board. I'm here tonight to introduce to you the construction management and inspection amendment number 1 for the San Marcos Interceptor project phase 2. I'm just going to share my screen. As many of you are aware, the San Marcos Interceptor phase 2 project is the last leg of the interceptor, which consists of over 12,000 feet of new 42-inch diameter sewer trunk pipeline between Twin Oaks Valley Road and Pacific Street. Project was originally identified in the 1991 master plan, and initial phases of the project, including phase 1 and 1A, kicked off as early as 2002 through 2014, and different elements, stages of design, bid, and construction. As you'll see in the graphic I've shared on the screen, phase 2 consists of 3,400 feet of new pipeline between Via Veracruz and Pacific Street through the San Marcos Creek corridor, which consists of existing district easements, up Tamarisk Lane, and then reconnecting at our manhole number 1, our tie-in manhole, at the intersection of San Marcos Boulevard and Pacific Street. Many of you are probably familiar with seeing some of the construction activities on San Marcos Boulevard. I can tell you that the tunnel underneath Pacific Street is complete, and construction crews are now working their way east past this tie-in connection at the mobile home park to the tie-in at Tamarisk Boulevard. Tamarisk Lane sewers have already been installed. So this last leg on San Marcos Boulevard will take approximately 4 weeks from now. So when we're meeting the second meeting of March, all the work on San Marcos Boulevard should be wrapped up or very nearly wrapped up, and moving on to the last leg of the project, which will be in the San Marcos Creek easements between McMar Road and Via Veracruz. That's just a quick project update where we're at today. As for the original authorization of this specific item, the board of directors approved a professional services agreement with Valley as part of the San Marcos Interceptor Phase 2 project for award for construction management and inspections as part of the construction award in the amount of $493,614 on June 17th of 2020. Valley's original scope of work for construction management and inspections was based on a rough 10-month construction duration. Over the course of construction between 2020 to the present time frame, district authorized additional night work activities, night shifts, which were in addition to day shifts of construction being worked out, which was really to the district's benefit to authorize that work due to scheduling delays, which were encountered early on, due largely to unforeseen underground utilities. Adjacent utility conflicts showed their head. Some of them were unidentified utilities. We were working in very close proximity to a 16-inch diameter high pressure gas main with SDG&E. Everything considered, we had to redesign the sewer alignment on San Marcos Boulevard, which also included the tunnel alignment. The delays accounted for about 2 months total delays, as I mentioned, plus additional night shift work, which required additional boots on the ground type inspections, soils testing, and geotechnical engineering services. Staff received the amendment number 1 request from Valley on January 24th of 2021 to capture these additional services. Staff reviewed the amendment for content and completeness for the additional services, testing, and coordination services. Valley time and materials not to exceed. Amendment number 1 fee is $142,560. Valley will perform the remaining construction management and inspection services for the project, which includes environmental and biological monitoring and geotechnical engineering services. Staff will provide final project management and inspection oversight services throughout the remainder of construction. This project is identified in the fiscal year 2021 budget with a budget amount of $8.5 million. The project funding sources are divided 29% from sewer replacements and 71% from sewer capacity funds. The total estimated cost and budgetary summary are identified in page 51 of your board packet. In summary, construction contract total just north of $6.3 million. Change order 1 constitutes the majority of the 5% contingency which has a remainder of just over $55,000. And all additional planning, design, staff services, and construction management services, including the original and Amendment 1, track the project budget pretty closely to where we expect it to be on track. And as we estimate it today, we should anticipate a small budget surplus in the range of about $17,000. Now, this doesn't include any future change orders or district initiated changes. As mentioned to the Engineering and Equipment Committee, we expect the rain season that is forthcoming to be a big wild card in the completion of this project, especially in the creek easements where the groundwater tables are high and flooding can become an issue if it's inundated with rain. With this, staff with support from the Engineering and Equipment Committee recommends that the Board of Directors authorize the General Manager to execute Amendment Number 1 for $142,560 with Valley CM for additional construction management, inspection, and geotechnical engineering services for the San Marcos Interceptor Phase 2 project. And with that, I will take any questions there may be.
Do any of the board members have any questions at this time?
I do. I have a couple of questions. Thank you for that presentation. So if I understand it correctly, the original budget was 8.5 million for this.
That's
for
the total project
the
budget.
entire project.
Mhm.
Okay. And I thought you mentioned 6.3 million is where we are now. Did I think that?
6.3 was the contract with the prime contractor, TC Construction. Only the contract with the contractor, not including Valley CM or additional staff support services.
So all told, even with the approval of the 142, where are we related to the 8.5 million?
Hey, Ryan, could you stop sharing your screen and I'll share the copy of the staff report if that would be helpful. Can you all see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so Ryan, why don't you speak to this? Maybe it'll be helpful for the directors.
Yeah, I'll just kind of walk you through the budget, 8.5 million total project budget. The construction contract with TC Construction is a $6.3 million value. Change order 1 received to date constitutes for many of the conflict redesign challenges we faced early on, in addition to other things as well. That never went over the 5% contingency for Ordinance 146. So remaining under that contingency limit, we still have 55,862 that has not been spent. As many directors know, this could go quickly of a job of this scale and magnitude. We're not expecting any big changes at this point, dealing with San Marcos Boulevard mostly behind us and the conflicts and challenges that we encountered there. Moving on to the creek, as I mentioned, it'll mostly be an issue of groundwater that is the main wild card moving forward and potential risk to the district. Planning, design, and environmental services. This was the district's engineer of record, the design engineer on the contract, Kennedy Jenks. Staff overhead, planning, design, leading back all the way to, I want to say 2013 or 14 when this initially got kicked off, 385. And then bid phase services, support services with Kennedy Jenks, the original Valley CM construction management and inspections contract for 493. And then the Amendment 1, which is shown there at 142. And then the anticipated total construction phase costs for staff at 264, which we are currently tracking under that as well. So if all continues on the current course, we should end up with a budget surplus of roughly 17,000, but that is obviously subject to change.
And directors, just to clarify, these are all encumbered numbers. So that's the total encumbrance based on our ordinance. So that 55,000 is not spent to date. So these are all our encumbrances. So we like to show kind of how we're tracking all the encumbrances on a job for the worst case scenario, except for the unknowns if we hit other change orders. But as Ryan already mentioned, the good news is we're out of the big danger zone into our owned easement. And really it's the rain that's now the only factor that's left, knock on wood. So.
Can you try to mitigate against having the rain? I don't know if finishing up quickly would help, or if there's some other things that you could do to try to mitigate the risk.
Yeah, absolutely. And within our specs, we have bypass pumping and groundwater pumping, and then we have a certain amount that we can move around already. So some rain is not going to hurt us. And however, we're working in basically partial upland, partial wetland areas that have some environmental constraints and also have windows when we could get in, including the biological monitoring. So at some point, there's going to be, if there's a delay, it'll add costs to the contractor, or if we stop them to mitigate, it'll add costs to the contractor. So at that point, Ryan's job and our job in engineering is to kind of weigh those risks and figure out what the best thing to do for the district. We're really hoping that we finish this job up because the big area of impact is we're basically through it now, or just about through it now. So again, crossing my fingers, when we get into that easement area, we're hoping that, a part of us obviously is hoping for a wet winter, but there's the construction side of our house is hoping for a dry winter.
Has San Marcos, have both lanes in both directions been opened already?
I didn't mention earlier, but the work right now on San Marcos Boulevard is only being performed at night. So during the day, 2 lanes in each direction are open. You'll see the equipment and machinery off to the side, but crews are only getting in there and they're setting up a detour in the evening to perform this work. They're actually coming up on a very interesting part of the job right now where they're under crossing an existing 14-inch water transmission main. So there's some intricacies involved there that slows them down a little, and it is night work. So they may not be as productive as day work, but it's a big traffic mitigation measure by working at night right now on San Marcos Boulevard.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I know it makes things tougher for them to have, and more dangerous, quite frankly, to have to work at night. But we do receive a lot of feedback about the traffic impacts on those projects. So thanks for doing that.
It goes without saying that no one can you can't make everyone happy, right? With night work comes its own challenges. We've received some complaints with the neighboring mobile home park, at night with operations going on. So just so the directors are aware of that, it's nothing is perfect, but we're trying to mitigate it as best we can.
Appreciate that. What do you guys typically do as far as I drive that every morning and every afternoon on my way home? It's pretty, as to be expected, the asphalt's pretty torn up around that area. Do you wait till the project's completely done before you go back and do all the road repairs, or are you going to do the road repairs now that you've moved on past this section?
As they move down the road, they will do base paving, and they'll put down a base pavement section. And they'll wait till it's all complete to do their final paving, or they'll wait for a big section of paving to do, and they'll come in and final pave that. But San Marcos Boulevard work isn't that extensive, it's not that long of a stretch. So probably wait for the whole thing to be done to do final paving.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I can't remember, but I don't think that we had a motion and a second yet on this item. So I'll entertain a motion on item 2.2, please.
I'll move staff's recommendation.
Okay, we got a motion to approve item 2.2 as presented by staff. Is there a second?
A second.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion by Director Elletharp and a second by Director Boyd Hodgson. Any other discussion before we vote? Okay, great. We'll go ahead and do a roll call vote. Director Hernandez.
Yes. Excuse me, yes.
Director Pinnock.
Yes.
Director Althar.
Yes.
Director Boyd Hodgson.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Okay, moving on to item 2.3, award of a professional services agreement for the ductile iron pipe condition assessment pilot project. This is
And
going to be Susan.
I'll jump in here and then I'll hand it off. So you've heard at previous meetings that we're really getting into asset management and condition assessment. And this is just another piece of that. This is kind of I'll call it an innovative technology. And Susan Bowman's going to tell you what it is we're going to be doing and what we'll do with the information that we find from it. So Susan, take it away.
Thank you, General Manager, and thank you, President Sinella and members of the board. I'm going to share my screen to bring up the staff report. Okay, so what we're going to ask for your approval for today is the award of a professional services agreement for the ductile iron pipe condition assessment pilot project. Currently in the district, we have about 357 miles of water pipe, and of that, about 100 miles is ductile iron installed between 1972 and 2015. However, you can see from this graph here that the majority of our ductile iron pipe is less than 20 years old. So it's very new. And I may note as well that in the last 10 years, however, we have discontinued primarily replaced with PVC, the ductile iron pipe installation. So within our district, the good news is that our average water main break per mile is very much well below the Waterworks Association industry standard for a district of our size. However, we are starting to see an increase in our main breaks, and a majority of those main breaks are occurring on this ductile iron pipe, which, as I mentioned, is not very old. It's not reached its useful life. And so there's something with the ductile iron pipe which is leading to a premature failure. As you can see from this graph, it really highlights that situation. So ductile iron pipe is about 28% of our pipe inventory and is nearly half of the breaks that we're experiencing here, looking at the last 13, 14 years. So this pilot project that we're going to do, it's a component of the overall pipeline condition assessment program. As Glenn mentioned, we are embarking on doing a lot of these condition assessments as part of the asset management program so that we can really gain knowledge and information about how best to spend our funds, understand what the condition of our pipes are in, and allow us to make the best decisions for how we're going to extend the useful life of those assets. So the ductile iron pipe pilot project is a project that we're going to undertake with VNA Consultants, one of our as-needed consulting firms. And we've worked with them previously. So we worked with them over the last 2 years. They did an assessment of various technologies that are available, different methodologies that are used in the district for doing condition assessments on ductile iron pipe. And as a separate project, they also did this with our steel pipes as well. So with the information that they gathered, our next step was to do this pilot project and start assessing the efficacy of the different methodologies that are available. And again, one of the most important things that we're trying to do here is come up with technologies that allow us to determine the condition of the pipes at the lowest cost available to us with the different technologies. Because again, it's critical. We have a lot of pipeline and we really need to understand where to focus our repair and rehab dollars, and the condition will allow us to do that. So this pilot project, what we VNA will be doing for us project management. They'll be looking at soil resistivity and other soil analysis to get a good understanding of the amount of corrosivity of the soils in this in the area, which I'll talk to you about what area we're going to look at. And then they're going to be overseeing a leak detection. So majority of this project is the funding is going towards the leak detection. Leak detection, water loss isn't a major concern here in the district. However, this leak detection technology for purposes of condition assessment will hopefully give us some really valuable information as we move forward, trying to understand how best to determine the real condition of these pipes that again are not very old. So we really can't rely on age as a factor to determine what pipes to replace. Let me see here. So this pilot program, what VNA had looked at previously was the different sectors of the district for the ductile iron pipes. Let me bring up this chart here. As you can see here, this is the district, and VNA Consulting went in and put 25 areas together. The 25th area are these random ductile iron pipes just sprinkled throughout the district. But these 25 areas that were put together, you know, based on geographical area, and then they applied risk prioritization, consequent likelihood of failure, I should say, based on main breaks that were occurring. They did look at age, they looked at other factors, and applied an algorithm to come up with likelihood of failure, and applying then a risk assessment to the different areas. And you can see here, this area 8, 9, and 10 on the chart here, you can see it's the medium to high risk level of the ductile iron pipe in the district. So VNA will be coming in and in areas 8, 9, and 10, which is approximately 25 miles of pipeline. And they're gonna do this detection, look at the soil conditions, et cetera, and give us a report on what those findings show us. And from those findings, we'll move forward in our, you know, really measured approach and use the next methodologies that are available to us. We may use some things called there's sticks that go into the pipelines through hydrants that can get wall thickness and some other technologies. They are costlier. And so that's why we want to be targeted in our approach and use the information from the leak detection and the soil corrosivity to really target where we may be using those more sophisticated technologies to really get an understanding of the condition of the pipes. And again, it's important to remember that the reason we're doing this is that we need to know where to spend our dollars. It's very costly to just replace pipes. And again, because these are relatively new, we can't just go on age. So it's important that we get as much knowledge and information and use that to really determine where to spend our replacement and rehab funds.
Susan, I think that's an important point to kind of talk to the board about. I mean, you're looking at 25 miles of pipes. Majority of it has been in our worst area of breaks. Most of the breaks have been due to, you know, quasi-human error. Most people don't realize that the water lines go in, we inspect them, everything's good. Sooner or later, you know, this is the boom before the recession, dry utilities come in, not all the breaks, but a lot of them. And when they put in the phone lines and the power lines that go to individual homes, they end up cutting the top of the pipe, but the pipe, since it's fairly robust, still lasts for 10 years. And then we start getting breaks. So we're past any kind of statutes because it's 10, 15 years old. But we're left with the consequences of those human errors. And just to replace 25 miles of pipe would take, you know, roughly $30-40 million out of our reserves. And that's just one little area. So you look at how much that costs. So, you know, using technology, trying to pinpoint how to use our resources is going to be a key indicator of basically working smarter to ensure that our customers and our ratepayers are not cut off in service.
Yes, thank you, James. That's right. It's really so that we can again, use our funds and apply it as best as possible. So what we're asking for today, and this is part of a capital project. So we're spending a portion of an existing capital project that is for the ductile iron pipe condition assessment program. We're asking for $70,402 to be used on this pilot for VNA in this particular three cluster area to do the inspection services. As you see, the majority of the funds go towards the actual inspection work. This has gone in front of the Engineering and Equipment Committee and gained their support. So today, what we are asking for is that you recommend the Board of Directors authorize General Manager to enter into a professional engineering services agreement with VNA Consulting in the amount of $70,402 for project management, inspection services, and evaluation of the results of the ductile iron pipe condition assessment pilot project. And if there's any other comments or questions, I will take them at this time.
President Snella, if I may, real quickly. Susan, can you scroll back to the map? I'm just trying to make sure the board can orient themselves. So in case you didn't know, 8, 9, and 10 is the San Alejo Hills area. So that's the area we've been having most of our problems. And Susan, maybe you can let the board know what the customers in that area will experience while we're doing the leak detection in terms of disruption of service and noticing and those types of things.
Sure. James, I'll turn that over to you.
Sure. So they actually probably won't notice much. I mean, of course, during COVID, they may notice a little bit because usually this is done during the day. And the technology we're using is a leak detection. So we basically need to shut off their meters. Certain areas may take an hour. Certain areas may take 2 hours to make sure that there's no water running through the pipes. And then the sounding equipment could basically, with recording and monitoring, could look at that. But this is going to be a non-destructive, a non-invasive process. So during a non-COVID time, majority of people would be at work. We'd be sending out notices, door hangers, and also prior to literally going door to door to make sure people got our notices, and then working also with the HOA to actually send out information. Depending on the outcome, as the board may recall, we did that pipe lining project in San Alejo Hills a few years ago. And we actually had meetings in the neighborhood where we set up a tent and we were out there explaining what was going on. So as we work with the HOA, if something like that, Susan and I would take the lead on that and meet with the HOA. It's a very short commute for me because it's literally around the corner from where I live anyway. So be happy to meet with the HOA there and kind of explain the situation and what we're doing. A lot of the residents there have been experienced pipe failure. So, as we talk about them when we met previously, they're very understandable and actually very excited of us taking a proactive approach to hopefully reducing the size and the frequency of future disruptions and pipe breaks. So in general, it's a minimal impact. And even if we go to the next phase and we get good information in this, we're not looking at a system that'll dig up the streets. We're looking at a high resolution system that looks at wall thickness of the pipe that goes in through the fire hydrants. Still, the water is shut off and they will be without water. And for the residents who identify that they have a need, there's somebody at home, they have a need for water, we provide bottled water.
And it's, I'll add to that, James, it's about a 2-week inspection time period that will be, and of course we'll be, going throughout those areas. So
that's for the entire 25 miles, correct?
25
Susan?
miles, yes.
And just one more comment. So we've had some less than ideal experience with ductile iron pipe, but it's not an experimental material. This was kind of the workhorse in the industry. Ductile iron pipe is very common in the industry. It's just, I don't know if it's a combination of our soil corrosivity or the disregard with which the dry utilities installed their facilities over ours, but we are experiencing an above average failure rate. And we need to make sure we identify what future problems may be caused by it.
That's a great point, General Prum. So what we've discovered in the main breaks, and we want to verify this through this pilot program, is a lot of the dry utility packages with the human error. Not all of them though, but the other thing that we believe is a catalyst to the accelerated corrosion is the lower part of San Luis Hills that you see in orange on your map there. A lot of area at the time, the city of San Marcos made the developer put what we call concrete treated base, where it's a mixed in cement into the base material below the streets to basically create a harder surface for the road because of all the rock and the rocky kind of conditions they ran into. Well, the problem with that is the cement treated base leaches down, and when you have the protective coating removed from the metallic pipe, that it creates like an alkaline water, almost kind of a battery effect, and it really accelerates the corrosion. We've had some initial soils tests from our breaks. We take a sample every time, and we discovered that concrete treated base areas are potentially one of the catalysts. But now that we have a corrosion engineer on board and part of a larger pilot study, we want to kind of verify that. So those are kind of our suspected reasons. But obviously, this analysis will help flush that out and solidify those at least those theories.
So I have a couple of comments. So these are my constituents. This is my neighborhood. So I appreciate you going into detail about what to expect. And I would like to be invited to any appearances that you make about this so that I can talk to my neighbors as well. So I would like to get that commitment from you to involve me. I would very much appreciate that. So going forward, so this is a pilot project, and I understand the mechanics of that. Going forward, as you, let's say this is a successful project, will you have to do the same sort of surveying, before you move into all of these other places, like, up in 23 and 24, or, let's say you go to 20 next because it's a higher priority. What does it look like going forward after the pilot project?
I could start on that, Susan, and then you could jump in. So Director Boyd-Hodgins. So we don't know what the results will be, but what we're hoping for is data that we could use, obviously. So, if I were to just kind of guesstimate of what we're going to see, is what we're hoping for is actual usable data. And I kind of imagine it in different buckets. You could have there's an imminent leak, and you saw the budget of 600,000, we're spending 70,000. There'll be some staff time added to that before we're done. However, the rest of that budget is so we could actually schedule repairs of those leaks before they become failures. And then we're going to be starting to track. And one of Susan's goals here is, 1 point is not really an indication of a trend, but over time, as we start finding potential leaks and potential failure points using different tools. This is one tool, that high resolution tool. We use Pika, was a tool that we use up in another project. Very successful, much more expensive tool. That's another tool that we could use. And between using the different tools, if we could start identifying breaks before they happen and categorizing them in different categories based on risk, priority, and consequence. So in other words, I envision it as we're going to have a group of projects that, hey, there might be a problem in the next year or two. So, it'll go over to our operations managers group. Sorry, guess I need to move more. And operations managers group, and he may prioritize fixing those things within a year or budgeting it for next fiscal year for our construction crews to fix. There might be other jobs that are eminent. So he may prioritize that, or if he doesn't have the resources, ask engineering to get a contractor on board, and we'll do it under kind of like an emergency because it's an eminent failure. For example, if we had something underneath San Marcos Boulevard, right in front of the high school, that's an eminent failure. It's going to be night work. We're going to have to get in there and fix it before it becomes a big problem. And then Susan's group's going to track those costs over time. What we're hoping to show is even with the cost of these technologies, the leak detection, this first step is a fairly low entry point for 25 miles. The higher resolution, we want to be able to get data to start pinpointing that down, because to do 25 miles at the high resolution test, I don't even know what the cost would be. Susan, jump in if you know what that would cost or if you have a guess, but it's probably well into the millions.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, based on the
uh,
high.
so we, so we want to get data from here before we use that higher resolution tool. And then at the end of the day, we want to track it and report back to management and the board of how we're doing. You know, every break that we could proactively fix is going to be a lower cost to our ratepayers than an emergency response that creates damage to the road and puts out our ratepayers and our customers of water. So that's the goal of this program, but it's a long-term program. And that data is going to take a while to get, but that's what we're looking to get out of this. And this is just one of the tools. We're hoping for good data that will help us narrow the amount of high resolution work that we need to do.
Yeah, and President Sinella, when we get that data in, staff will do the analysis, and then we'll be coming back through the engineering committee and to the board to share the findings and to tell you what our next steps will be based on what we experienced in the pilot project.
Okay, any other questions?
Question.
Director Pennick?
And you answered some of them, General Manager Prom. This is not a new product, but I mean, something's happened. Is there a new supplier? I mean, is there stuff under warranty? So I had a couple questions actually. One, is there a new supplier? Is it a substandard pipe? And what are other districts doing? Are they using the same pipes and having the same problems?
Yeah, I'll look to James to help out here, but a lot of the other districts use the same pipe material. Whether they obtained it from the same provider, I don't know. You mentioned warranties. Typically, when we don't install a lot of this pipe, it's usually development that installs the pipe and we accept it and it's subjected to a 1-year warranty. So most of this is well beyond its warranty period. So it's ours and we get to deal with it right now. Unless there was some industry action that's being taken against a particular provider, then I think there's longer warranties. But I can't comment whether because I don't know. I don't know if other agencies are having similar failure experience as we are, but my guess is some of the things that James and Susan said about the soil types and the cement treated base led to a lot of this, but we're hoping that the pilot project will help us get to the bottom of some of it.
Yeah, thank you, General Manager Prum. And just to add to that, Susan, can you scroll up just a couple pages to that year, the years the pipe was installed? So next one up right there. So what we're looking at, and if you look at the San Luis Hills, the older San Luis Hills area, most of that was built during the previous boom prior to the Great Recession. And that's a lot of places that we're having failure with. And even that other area, I believe was area 20, as up north, which is what we call the Paloma area, that was built around the same time also. We actually went through, even before Susan started with us here, we're working with our inspection group and looked at old submittals of pipe manufacturers or contractors trying to find links. And there was no rhyme or reason, at least, with the level of effort that we put in, not that there couldn't be, but at the time we didn't find any. But a lot of it was the construction methodology. The dry utility contractors started using what they call ditch wheels. They're basically like a huge saw blade to put their utility packages in. That time they still use it till today because it's very efficient and fast. And the way we did inspections back then, which we've changed, is and it was a normal practice when your utility was in and it's deeper, and you didn't accept it, but it was done basically, then you left the site. There was no reason to keep on charging for inspection fees because there's nothing to inspect. The dry utility comes in later and puts in its utilities, its conduits basically for power and cable and everything else. So again, not all the breaks, but the majority of the breaks are human error combined with that concrete treated base is what we think. And most of those breaks happened during that boom period. It wasn't a defective material or everything else. We have an engineering meeting for the heads of engineering for all the county. Some other agencies have experiences, but a lot of agencies went to PVC right prior to the boom. They were using ductile iron. So good news and bad news about PVC is it's not as robust. So if one of those big ditch wheels hit a PVC pipe, it would burst immediately. So then at that point, the contractors on site, they're responsible for it and they have to fix it. The bad thing about ductile iron, it's fairly robust. I mean, it's ductile iron. It could take a beating, which sounds good. But then when you cover up that beating and you go 10, 15 plus years later, that becomes an isolated break. And so we're kind of in that scenario. So it's not, what I'm stating here is not conclusive, but all the data is kind of leading towards that. And we're hoping obviously to get more and more data, which will help pinpoint that, things built in that boom period, ductile iron. And if you look at where we're going with that, go back to the map, Susan. Those areas line up with kind of that scenario of, it's built right during the boom prior to the Great Recession and prior to us changing our standards. If you look at some of the newer areas, like the newer area of San Luis Hills is not as bad. We were already in transition in some of those newer neighborhoods of actually inspecting the dry utilities going in and also looking at other solutions and changing over to PVC. Hopefully that answers most of your concerns or questions.
Thank you.
Director Patty.
Thank you.
Yeah, this was obviously been an issue for a long time. And I remember when I first got on the board back in 2014, we were talking about this then too. And the previous general manager had mentioned the soil issues, but he also mentioned that, and I forget the name of the tool, but the dry utilities will use this like metal rod or stick, and as they're trying to find where our pipes are located, they'll just kind of like stick it into the ground. So as robust as the ductile iron piping might be, it doesn't take much to kind of just break that outer covering, and then maybe chip away, and then that moisture in the soil and everything else over time. What's the name of that stick? But I mean, it sounds like they're just going, they're waiting for that doing or whatever it might be, but it doesn't take much.
Yeah, actually that's an excellent memory presence. That I forgot about that. It's just basically a location rod. It's basically a T with a metal pole that's sharpened at the end. And the ductile iron has a thin coat of like cement material on the outside. And then it's got a polypropylene bag to help protect it even more, but that stick is sharp enough that it penetrates through the bag and cracks the outer coating. And we were getting basically perfect circle, up at the top crown of the pipe of failures that looked like silver dollars, because it basically goes in, corrodes, and mushrooms, and basically creates a cap. And that mushroom is really just rust. It's just corrosion. And then something happens, a little pressure difference, rain event, and when that mushroom is basically a scab peels off, then all of a sudden we get damage in the roads. And I have pieces of ductile iron pipe from our operations crew digging them out that have these almost perfect ovals that are right on top of the pipe, and those were probably from those what we're guessing from those probes.
Interesting. Hey, Director Hernandez, I think I saw your hand go up about 5 minutes ago. Did you want to chime in?
Yeah, no, you guys answered the question.
Okay, great. Any other questions from the board? I'll just make one last comment. First off, thank you, Susan. Great presentation. Appreciate it. And I'm just really glad that we're taking a more of a proactive approach, as was mentioned, around this whole topic, because these water main breaks are both very expensive, but very impactful to the customers when they happen, right? And so if we can stop one water main break from happening, it's probably well worth the exercise. But I like your approach also, that you're kind of starting small, almost like you're doing a beta test in our most common area for these breaks, and then you're going to evaluate based off the data that you get from that test, and if it makes sense and there's the right ROI for doing it, then you'll expand it and expand the program throughout the rest of the district. So I think you're taking a very smart approach, and I really appreciate it, Susan. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, with that, if there's no other discussion right now, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion on item 2.3.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve 2.3 by Director Hernandez and a second by Director Boyd Hodgson. Any other discussion, final discussion before we take a vote? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and do a roll call. Director Elithart,
Yes.
Director Hernandez,
Yes.
Director Boyd Hodgson,
Yes.
Director Pinnock,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you again, Susan and James and everybody else that contributed. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That concludes our action items for this evening, and we'll go into our reports, starting off with the general manager's report.
Yeah, and I have no report tonight.
Okay, that's great. Then we'll move on to 3.2, District Legal Counsel report.
I have a brief report. One is two bills that were introduced. The first one is SB 323. This was introduced by Aqua, and they've been reaching out to agencies to support the legislation. It would essentially create a statute of limitations on challenges for fees and charges of 120 days. It also has a provision that would allow agencies to use the validation statute to validate its rates and fees after adopted. It's important for agencies because these can linger on for a time before claimants file a refund claim or a challenge to long after the rates have been adopted. And so that is pending. The second is AB 361, which is an amendment to the Brown Act. This would essentially convert the executive order into legislation, which would allow local agencies to use teleconferencing during emergencies, either what are defined as local emergencies, which could be proclaimed by the agency themselves, or a state of emergency, which would be one proclaimed under the California Emergency Services Act by the state. And then just to follow up on the question I was asked earlier, there's really three circumstances when we're dealing with the public and public comments. So we can respond briefly respond to their comments or questions. We can provide a reference to staff or other resources for factual information, such as, Glenn often does. He'll say, well, meet with the district engineer after the meeting and they'll get you the information you need. And the board can also direct the staff to place the item on a future agenda, as was done tonight. That's everything I have, President Snella. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Gopin. Appreciate it. We'll move on to item 3.3. Director Elithart, do you have a report from the Water Authority?
We haven't had any meetings of the Water Authority since our last Vallecitos board meeting. So coming up on the 23rd, I have a Colorado River Work Group meeting, and February 25th will be our regular board meeting. And that's all I've got.
Okay, thank you. Item 3.4, you mentioned earlier, Director Hernandez, that you were in a capital improvement committee meeting this morning.
Yes, we had our meeting this morning at 7:30, and we discussed a couple of items: the capital improvement project status, the proposed 2021 technical plan, capital improvement, and the acceptance of the cogen building structural repair. And it was a long meeting, so I won't go into it, but the cogen building repair, interesting, was connected with the asset manager and the condition assessment. When I became a board member, you do an orientation, and we went around the plant, and I went by the cogen building, and I saw a stucco stain and a little bubbling, but nothing that even caught my eye beyond that. Director Boyd Hodgson and Director Sinella, when at the next meeting, they're going to give a presentation on this. pay particular attention to two things. One, the original building, you'll see it. And then secondly, when they exposed that little bit of a blister and that little bit of a stain, turned out to be a $3 million renovation. And I was the skeptic. So as they were doing this, I went out to the site. The beam, because this has happened to me professionally. We have patched columns and beams, and it wasn't a big deal. So I was suspect, and so I went out there. The column and the beam looked like Swiss cheese. The erosion and corrosion, if we would have had a seismic event, that building would have collapsed. That's how serious this was. And you would have never known, except we did this conditional assessment and they chipped away at this thing. And it was like peeling an onion, one little chip. And when you see that presentation, that wall is at least 60 foot long and a full 2 stories that they had to replace. It's phenomenal. So our undertaking the assessment and condition assessment at Vallecitos is just money going to be well spent, and it's going to save us millions of dollars. So that was the report. I won't go into the rest of it.
Okay, thank you, Jim. The Policy and Finance Committee for EWA also met last week. Our meeting was sounds like it was considerably shorter than yours, but we did have one primary topic that we discussed, and apparently I'm as you guys know, I'm new to the board there, but the EWA has this parcel that's currently unused. They call it the South Parcel, and they've tried to, use that land to some sort of benefit to generate revenue and apply that revenue to operational costs down there at the plant. And and they have done it. And Jim, you're probably more familiar with it with your history with EWA than I even am now. But some of the things they've tried to do over there is kind of equipment storage for construction vehicles and stuff like that. And the surrounding community so far, everything that they've tried out there has given them some negative feedback. It could be noise, it could be dust, it could just be people don't like to look at construction trucks being stored next to the ocean, all those different things. So they're now looking at another possible use for that land, and it's probably going to be just as controversial. But they're looking at putting a cell phone tower, and this is kind of a weird situation because the committee, what they were really asking of us as the committee was, is this anything that we should even bring to the whole board to consider? And the authority as to if we put a cell phone tower on the property, or what we might do to that cell phone tower, like make it look like a pine tree or whatever. Really, a lot of that is going to fall on the city of Carlsbad, and their city codes as it pertains to this is going to dictate a lot of what we can and cannot do. So what they were really asking from the policy committee was, should we even bring this to the whole board? Well, the board did, after much discussion, did approve to bring it to the rest of the board. So that'll be coming at the next full board meeting. And then I believe at that time, the full board will be asked, do we want to, move forward with this? And that moving forward pretty much means, do we want to, kind of turn it over to the city of Carlsbad for them to go through their whole public process and make sure that it's designed by their rules and their codes. And then if it goes through all of that through the city of Carlsbad and it passes, which there's no guarantee that it would even pass, then we would be able to implement that use there on the property. So sounds pretty simple, just a little cell phone tower, but it's very much complicated. So we'll see. But as you guys know, the committees don't really have the authority to approve anything. All we said is, okay, sure, let's put it forward to the entire board. So that was what we primarily focused on at the Policy and Finance Committee. Any standing committees meet? I can just tell you the Finance Committee is meeting on Monday, but did any of the other committees happen to meet? Director Althart?
Yeah, President Sinella, the Engineering Committee met on February 8th. The minutes are in tonight's board package. The items that we discussed are what you heard tonight. Susan's presentation on pipeline condition assessment and the associated pilot project, and then the San Marcos Interceptor amendment that Ryan Morgan went through for us. So that's what we did.
Great, thank you. Any other committees meet since the last time we were together? Okay, great. Directors' reports on meetings, conferences, or seminars attended. Director Hernandez.
Yes, I attended the Urban Water Conference. Very meld right into our meeting, so I didn't get to finish it, but it opened up a very interesting, interesting and for a virtual meeting, but they had a virtual lunch. But there was a couple of interesting things that I caught. Just a casual conversation, well, more than casual, about the Salton Sea and what is going on there, and then it's supposed to be posted, but there was a cyber security breach in Florida that I don't know who did the hacking, but somebody hacked the system and added 100 times more sodium oxide than is normal. And fortunately, one of the employees caught it, and so they eliminated it, but it popped into my head. They did say that their SCADA system, which for the new board members, and I had to look it up because I always forget it, supervisory control and data acquisition, was older versions. And are we up to date? Do we have to worry about that, Glenn?
Yeah, so we always have to worry about cybersecurity. We're way more advanced than that agency in Florida. And I probably should have mentioned it in my general manager's report, but I am bringing an item forward to the board at next week's closed session to talk about that issue in Florida and what we're doing in particular here at Vallecitos. So
okay,
the board will have an opportunity, and we'll be in a closed session environment because of the associated security risks.
and then the other thing that caught my eye, I mean, many, but the one I was going to bring up was they had a covert response from the general managers, and they had an emergency water stoppage in Texas because of this serious weather that they're having. And do we have a plan for emergency electrical outages in our district?
I think Ed Pedrazzi is still with us, and Ed could probably better address what we've done to prepare ourselves for a variety of disasters, particularly including electrical outages. So Ed, can you illuminate that for us?
Yeah, you might remember back in 2011, Director Hernandez, where all of Southern California was out of power.
Yes.
We were one of the few agencies that had no issues. That's because of all of the years of planning, procuring generators. The board has approved our budgets over the years. I thank you very much for that. We are down right now to just having one pump station that does not have a generator that's on site, or that one we have a mobile generator that can power it. That pump station serves mostly agricultural, but it's still a few homes. And that is actually in the current budget, just a few dollars this year to do a little bit of engineering. And then next year, next year's budget is to procure a generator for that site. And it'll be the last station where we don't have a generator that can power it. But everywhere else, including our sewer treatment plant, our lift stations, we have generator power. The district also has its own fuel station, so we are able to fuel our generators as well. We're not required, or we're not relying on an outside agency to fuel our generators. We have all that ability in-house.
Thank you. And then the last item that caught my eye or my ear was one of the districts had quite a bit of political upheaval, if you will, and they had to put together a program relative to the fact that, you know, as a water district, we're a nonpartisan group, and I believe our values of our district, one of them is a respect for each of our individuals. So I don't know, have we had any kind of tension interaction over this political season that seemed to have lasted a lifetime?
No, I don't think we've had any problems. Are you talking about with the election and everything? Is that what you're talking
Well,
about?
yeah, the election and before the election and after the election and all that hocus pocus.
No, there was a period of time where we decided to close and lock the front gate because there was generic threats against governmental entities. Nothing specific about Vallecitos, but we took heed. The federal government and the state Office of Emergency Services was putting out alerts. So we decided to be proactive, but nothing happened at any of our facilities.
Oh, good. I didn't think so, but it was kind of interesting to hear that a district did have that problem. So thank you. That was my report on the water.
Any other directors attend any conferences or seminars or want to speak about anything?
Sure, I'll say a few words. I attended the same conference, and I took away some of the same things that Director Hernandez did. I attended the Cal DSAL conference, which was really informative for me. I learned a lot about DSAL. I learned a lot about the Bud Lewis facility. They offered a virtual tour, which I thought was really interesting. They spent a lot of time talking about the new technology that enables intake to not be quite as harmful for marine life, and that is a concern for some environmental groups. So I was really heartened to hear that. They also talked a lot about trying to make the desalination process more or less energy intensive. And that was a big focus of that conference. And I really appreciated hearing those perspectives. I attended the Urban Water Institute conference today as well. And I think my favorite part of it was the last part that I got to listen to the full portion of. Like Director Hernandez said, the conference ran into the meeting, but they had a group of young water leaders from the Water Education Foundation. And these young people were fabulous. They were so excited about water. And I really felt so hopeful that, California water is going to eventually be in the hands of these young people. They had so many great ideas, and the full report, and I can actually send it out to you all if you want it, but it had recommendations of, how to solve a lot of the water crises that we have. And it was really quite wonderful. To follow up on something that Director Hernandez said, one of the portions, they did have a portion about, they had different general managers talking about their leadership styles. And there was some comment about just the political atmosphere at the water district. And one of the things that they made sure that they did was they made sure that their district had a value statement. And the values were pushed out to the employees. And it not only sort of brought the temperature down in the room whenever people were getting a little bit hot under the collar, but it took the pressure off of, the general manager, for example, for being a referee, because he could just point to the value statement and say, these are our values. We've all agreed to these values. It became kind of a community agreement. So diffuse that situation. I thought that was really interesting. They also talked about how the racial and social justice unrest had impacted them. And I thought that was a really important topic for them to talk about. I don't know if we have surveyed our managers to ask how, if there was any fallout in their groups from, people after, people having a lot of feelings or not feeling comfortable talking about their feelings around the death of George Floyd or anything like that. I don't know if we've asked those questions, but there were several general managers that said, yes, we noticed that. And we tried to take a leadership role in that and be proactive, and we formed task forces in the community. And I thought that was really an important topic that they discussed. And I was really glad to hear that they were doing something like that.
Any other conferences attended? I didn't attend any conferences, but I did have kind of a cool opportunity to do a podcast. I guess is probably the right way to say it, with the San Marcos Chamber of Commerce. I think it was last weekend. I met with the CEO of the San Marcos Chamber, Rick Rangaitis, and the chamber has this. They have the whole setup for to record a podcast, and they do these with different people in the community and different people on the city council, the school board, and and now the water district. And so that was really neat. They pushed it out to their membership. It's on their website. I sent it to Chris or sent it to Glenn, and I don't know if Chris is going to put it out or not. Might not be worthy to put out. I don't know. Maybe I didn't do a good job. But if you're interested in it, it's out there, and it was a lot of fun to do. And it's about 15 minutes long. So moving right along to other business. So that concludes our reports. Other business, item 4.1 in your board packets are the quarterly board expenses on page 58 and 60. This is for information only, but is there any questions or discussions before we move on?
I do have a quick question. Are these
Yes, Director Boyd-Houghton.
Are these expenses incurred during the time, or are they the checks written? Because if they're expenses incurred during the time listed, then my expenses should be in there too, and they're not. But if it is dependent upon the time or the date that the check is cut, there might be a bit of an offset because I was coming on to the board. So I have that question. But secondly, I'm wondering, what's the budget for that for all of us? I know that I am attending conferences like crazy because I'm trying to learn everything I can, but I would really like some guardrails around what my budget is and how that's communicated to me and how it's divided amongst all of us. And maybe that's a topic for like another meeting. I don't know, but I would really appreciate that guidance.
Ben, I'm going to turn that one over to you.
Yeah, so it looks like our finance manager, Wes Owen, is here. He can address Director Boyd-Hodgson's first issue, and then maybe I can try to pick up on the second issue. So Wes, why don't you help us with that first part?
I'll try to do this. I'm driving, so I'm on my phone, but I'll try to try to answer the question. The director's expenses are paid based on the paid date, so it's not the time that it happened. So if you attended conferences and you haven't been paid for them yet on the pay date, then they won't be in there. And then I think that was the first question. The second part is the budget for the director's expenses, and that's actually in the budget on page, I think, 14 of water and probably 24 for sewer. It should say director's expenses for like travel and stuff, and that'll tell you the total expenses allowed for all directors.
And so is it divided across us, or is it a free-for-all?
It's a bit of a free-for-all. I mean, obviously there's limitations on the per diem amounts, right? So when you're attending events and you're getting a per diem, you're limited to 10 compensable events per month. So there's that limit there. We have limitations on travel. We certainly, if there's a conference in Hawaii, that's going to have to come before the board, right? If there's large travel expenses. But for simple things like local conferences, and clearly in this world, when we're going to a lot of these online conferences, the cost is pretty low. The cost really picks up when we start traveling a lot. Probably our most expensive one is when we go back to Washington, D.C. for lobbying efforts. It's a very expensive trip. Hotel and meals are very expensive there. And often we'll bring those in front of the board to see if the board's okay with sending representatives that far. But in terms of local travel within the state, even like for things like Aqua, where it may be a week-long conference up in Monterey, that's already in the budget. We assume a certain number of directors are going. If we notice any director going off the rails and going to too many conferences, we'll be in touch, but it hasn't become an issue yet.
Okay, thank you.
Comment?
Any other discussion? Director Hernandez?
Yes. When we do get together, please, sooner than later, the first board meeting that actually happens, I'm wondering if we could set up a time before the board meeting where we can get together. I mean, we've got 2 new board members, other than seeing their face here. It would be nice to shake their hand and see how they're doing, what they've been up to, and spend 30 minutes just to say hello and maybe have a biscuit or something.
We'll have a tailgate party. I'll bring the hot dogs and burgers.
Whatever, but something, for God's sake. I mean, I'm probably the more gregarious of all of us. I'm dying here.
Well, I'll talk with Mr. Gilpin and find out what we can do to give the board members a chance to get to know each other before their first in-person meeting. But there's certain, Brown Act and certain issues may limit us, but we'll do what we can.
I'll promise not to bring my flask, so that's okay.
It's a great suggestion, Director Hernandez. And I don't know about the handshakes. I think handshakes are gone for a while, but maybe we can rub elbows or do whatever the newest thing is. Director Boyd Hodgson and I had a video Zoom after she was elected, and it was really nice to kind of get to know her a little bit better. I know that Director Pinnick and I also met one-on-one as well, just to have that introduction. Still not the same as meeting in person. And I definitely get your point. And I think that I agree with you that as soon as we can, we should. But one of the things that Director Boyd Hodgson and I did discuss was at some point when we are able to meet in person, that we should have kind of a board retreat, and get everybody together and still conduct business, but also have a little bit of that kind of get to know you aspect to it as well. So, and those board retreats could be used for what we were talking about was kind of, putting together a strategic plan as a board, or coming up with some goals and things that we want to do, not only immediately, but, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the road. So that could be a good opportunity where we can mix kind of both some business and also a little bit of that social aspect, to have like you said, a biscuit or a slice of pizza or something like that.
Great idea.
Super. Cool. Where are we at here? I guess we're moving on to directors' comments and future agenda items. Does anybody have any comments or want to recommend any future agenda items above and beyond the one that Glenn already has from earlier?
I do have one more comment, and I know that General Manager Prum mentioned the closed session, but I think, depending on the outcome of the closed session, I think that there's still opportunity to reassure the public and reassure the board members in a way that's not sensitive, that Vallecitos is protected and insulated against this type of security breach that occurred in Florida. I'm sure I've been asked about it because it was all over the news. So people have asked. And so I think, in a way that is, that doesn't violate any security issues on our end to enable us to remain secure, I think that there's opportunity maybe at the next board meeting or after the closed session to talk about and reassure the general public.
Great idea. I also received some text messages and some instant messages from Facebook after that had happened from our customers in the community as well, asking about our kind of how, our protocols and stuff. So I totally agree 100%. Any other comments or future agenda items? Okay, well, wonderful meeting, everybody. Thank you to those who joined us from the public. Thank you to all the board members and staff, and have a nice evening.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.